All right, so moving on, we're now going to hone in a little bit more and talk about H-2A housing inspections. What do I need to know? The New York State Department of Labor is required to process employer applications for the federal H-2A foreign guest worker program, which includes conducting housing inspections. The New York State Department of Labor has the authority to conduct pre-occupancy housing inspections for all properties listed as available for H-2A and migrant and seasonal farm workers on applications for H-2A guest worker visas. The objective of a housing inspection is to document whether housing conditions comply with the applicable regulations. Currently in New York State, the New York State Department of Labor conducts housing inspections for locations with 4 or fewer H-2A workers. The Department of Health conducts housing inspections for locations with 5 or more H-2A workers. Keep in mind that the information today applies to inspections conducted by the New York State Department of Labor. The Foreign Labor Certification Unit will notify our field staff, known as agriculture labor specialists, when a housing inspection needs to be conducted. The Foreign Labor Certification Unit provides a general timeline for the housing inspection based on the employer's date of need. Housing inspections are due to Chicago 32 days prior to the date of need. Based on the year the housing was built or substantially renovated, the New York State Department of Labor will apply the following regulations: before 1980, ETA regulations, and built or substantially renovated after 1980, OSHA regulations. Employer questions regarding capacity, inspecting agencies, and corresponding regulations could be directed directly to the Foreign Labor Certification Unit. If the housing location is within a pre-existing structure, for example, an apartment built inside a barn, the employer must have a certificate of occupancy. Certificates of occupancy can be obtained through a local municipality. If you need assistance in determining if you need a certificate of occupancy or how to obtain one, you can again contact the Foreign Labor Certification Unit. Once the inspection is scheduled, the agriculture labor specialist will send a confirmation letter or email to the employer. The agriculture labor specialist will also send the applicable regulations to the employer. This correspondence will also remind the employer of key housing inspection preparations that should occur prior to the inspection. If the employer indicates that their housing is a rental property, the employer or agent may provide a copy of the lease directly to the Chicago National Processing Center. The agricultural labor specialist will ask if a lease is available and/or has been provided. If a lease isn't available, then the employer can provide a notarized letter detailing the rental terms for the term of the H-2A job order. Additionally, the employer must provide some sort of official documentation to ensure that the property meets local, state, and federal housing standards. If rental properties in the employer's town are inspected by the local municipality, a housing certificate of inspection or report from the municipality should suffice. If not, or if the employer prefers, the Department of Labor can conduct the housing inspection to satisfy this requirement. While on site for an inspection, the agricultural labor specialist will complete our internal housing inspection form. Here is what the housing inspection form looks like. The form details all the necessary information that the Foreign Labor Certification Unit needs to ensure that the housing complies with the applicable housing regulations. The housing inspection itself involves taking measurements of rooms, identifying key utilities and safety items, and identifying the required furniture and storage for the requested number of workers. The form also includes a reminder for staff to take photographs of important items: the exterior of the housing, the bedrooms, the bathroom, the common area, the kitchen stove, and any violations or areas of concern that the Foreign Labor Certification Unit might need to review. The second page also includes several employer certifications. Depending on the situation, the employer may need to certify that they will resolve any minor outstanding violations prior to housing approval. If the housing is winterized, the employer may certify that they will turn on the utilities 7 to 14 days prior to worker arrival. Employers may also certify that they will conduct well water testing, which we will discuss later in the presentation. The agriculture labor specialist will either preliminarily approve or not approve the housing before the employer signs the inspection form. If the agricultural labor specialist does not preliminarily approve the housing, he or she will tell the employer what needs to be rectified and make plans for reinspection or other documentation. The employer is also required to sign off on the inspection form on site. Here is the final page of the housing inspection form. This page deals with resolving violations. If the employer's housing falls slightly short of the federal regulations, our staff will inform the employer of the deficiency. The staff will document this slight deficiency, and the Foreign Labor Certification Unit will review the information. The Foreign Labor Certification Unit will be the body to determine if housing with slight deficiency will pass inspection on the state level. The Foreign Labor Certification Unit may follow up with you after the inspection if additional items need to be rectified prior to housing approval. If the Foreign Labor Certification Unit contacts you and indicates that there are outstanding violations that need to be rectified, you should make every effort to resolve those violations and provide the FLCU with the requested documentation as soon as possible. If the Foreign Labor Certification Unit cannot approve your housing inspection and send it to Chicago, Chicago cannot and will not issue a certification on your H-2A job order. Post-certification, the Foreign Labor Certification Unit will send a letter or email to the employer notifying them of the approval and any outstanding issues that need to be addressed prior to worker arrival. The employer can then also request a copy of the approved housing inspection form. Due to new federal guidance, our program is required to ensure that well water meets the drinking water requirements as specified in the housing regulations. The OSHA regulations applicable to farm worker housing constructed or significantly remodeled after 1980 state an adequate and convenient water supply approved by the appropriate health authority shall be provided in each camp for drinking, cooking, bathing, and laundry purposes. The ETA regulations applicable to farm worker housing constructed before 1980 state an adequate and convenient supply of water that meets the standards of the state health authority must be provided. The key detail in both regulations is the statement that the water must meet the standards of an appropriate health authority. Therefore, if you have a well on your property that is the source of water for farm worker housing, then you need to make sure that the water is consumable. Any housing that uses well water must provide the satisfactory results of a potable water test from a New York State ELAC certified lab. An ELAC certified lab is one that is recognized by New York State as certified and qualified to conduct the appropriate water tests. We recommend that employers conduct 2 water tests a year, but at minimum, we will need at least one recent satisfactory well water result as part of the H-2A application and housing inspection process. If an employer chooses to test water twice a year, at the time of the spring housing inspection, our office might be able to use a satisfactory lab result from late last year. Otherwise, the employer will need to de-winterize the housing and conduct a water test before the housing can be approved. We recently emailed out a notice to H-2A employers with DOL inspected housing, highlighting some key issues that may delay approval. Issue 1, overall housing is not prepared for the new season. Housing should be ready for worker occupancy, which means that the housing should be cleaned, personal effects of workers from the previous season packed away in boxes, with clean bedding on the bed. All kitchen items should be stored away, the refrigerator and stove cleaned for the new season, and the exterior of the housing free of debris and standing water. Issue 2, other tenants. Housing that is to be used as part of the H-2A program must be unoccupied. The New York State Department of Labor cannot certify that housing is available for workers when there are other workers or tenants living in the housing that needs to be approved. If housing is occupied at the time of inspection, we recommend that you advise our office and consider pushing back your date of need. Item 3 is laundry facilities. Based on guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor, laundry facilities must be provided on-site for H-2A workers. In limited instances, when laundry facilities cannot be made available immediately on-site, our office may consider approving the use of readily accessible laundry facilities in very close proximity. for example, in another housing unit next door or at an adjacent work site. We will now review some photos of housing that is or is not in compliance. Some of this housing is from New York State, while other photos are shared from a national housing training that is conducted by our federal partners. When preparing your housing, don't forget to consider the exterior of the unit. Regulations require that the exterior area be well maintained and without any additional debris. In these units, the outdoor lawn area is maintained and is not overgrown. There is not standing water or other debris in the lawn. Also, the exterior opens are screened. The screens appear to be intact and in good condition. These units are obviously in structural disrepair and the lawns are not maintained. Also, mobile trailer units like the one on the left are not permissible as housing in New York State. Kitchen areas should be cleaned and prepared for worker occupancy. Fridges should be completely cleaned out and open and available. Counter space should include ample area to prepare food as well as to store supplies and food items. This kitchen is not in compliance and is obviously a fire hazard. A compliant bathroom is clean and has functional plumbing. Showers should be checked for mold or other buildup and thoroughly cleaned before the housing inspection. Shower curtains and other essential items must be provided in the bathroom. Dirty showers and other items of concern, such as general disrepair or leaks related to the water system, will prohibit approval. Bedrooms should be set up prior to the housing inspection. This includes having linens available, the floors and windows cleaned, and storage space cleared out and available to the workers. Check the bedroom windows for screens and be sure that the screens are not damaged. Beds must be off the floor on a bed frame. If you provide bunk beds, make sure that they meet the spacing requirements as noted per regulations. Also, please ensure that you provide curtains or blinds to ensure worker privacy. In both of these images, the bed is not raised off the floor. In the first image, the sleeping space does not even appear to be an actual mattress, and the room is in disrepair. The second picture is in better shape, however, the bed on the floor would still prohibit approval. Again, if anyone needs to take note, here is our FLCU supervisory structure and contact information. Myself, Kaylin Gwise, I'm the main point of contact for housing inspections, so I invite anyone with any questions to please feel free to reach out at any time. And with that, we will again open it up for questions related to housing inspection.